Hello, future investor. So, today I want to take you on a little journey about how I decided to actually start this business so you can understand where I'm coming from and exactly what it is that we do here. So, it started about couple of years ago, probably about 5 years ago at this point. I was in Florida and I was like, you know what? I'm just sitting around, I'm not doing anything. Wouldn't it be great if I got paid for this? Now, it wasn't that easy and that simple, but that's kind of how it started. So, as I sat around doing nothing for a couple months as I was sick and I started getting better, I started looking into different markets and different areas that you could really expand in. Started figuring out how the real estate market worked. I figured out all these different aspects of the housing market, FSA loans, FHA loans, basically the different areas in the United States that work, where you want to invest, where you don't. What I ended up finding is there were a couple of key areas that I've been noticing have an upwards trend, similar to how we had an upwards trend up until 2008 and then it crashed, but these are going to be a lot more of a steady trend. The first one is actually in Wisconsin. The Milwaukee market's great, Madison market is great. Basically, anywhere in that area, it's a pretty solid market to get cheap units, rent them out for a lot of profitability. And then the other ones I found are actually in Florida. Tampa to be specific. Orlando is not bad. It's expensive, but you have a lot of profitability there just because of like the Disney parks and all that good jazz. And then you also have Jacksonville, Florida. Now, Jacksonville, Florida is what I'm actually kind of intrigued to tell you about because that's where I want to invest with you. So, the Jacksonville, Florida market crashed like everybody else back in 2008. When that hit, so let's go first into what it is that happens in order to make a market crash. So, what happens is you have a few different stages. First, you have an area like Jacksonville it's a very nice area. People start moving there because there's jobs, there's this, there's that, the other thing. When they start moving out there, there are less amounts of properties and places to go and live. So naturally, prices start rising. So at this point, this is where your house value is going to be high, but your build value is going to be low. So it'd be cheaper to build a house than it would to be to buy a house. You give it a couple more years, contractors start to realize this trend. They can go out there, they can build a house pretty cheap and sell it up here. However, what ends up happening is more and more contractors catch this wave. They build a ton of houses, sometimes in areas that just don't really have any reason to have houses in them. So what happens is something like the 2008 crash happens. The housing market goes down. In Jacksonville, what happened was there were so many excess houses. Then the crash hit. No one was buying property. And so now there are 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom houses there for around $100,000 that have never been lived in and only have been on the market or have been on the market for over 5 years. And again, those are almost brand new houses. My thought is we can find the proper places because now Jacksonville is right back up on the uptrend. Their property values are still low though because there are entire neighborhoods that are not in the section of the city that people want to live in right now. However, as this market is continuing to grow, you're not going to have any more contractors that are coming in to build more in Jacksonville or in a lot of these other areas that are worth investing in because they're not going to make the money because there's still houses that are being sold. Because at this point, the house value isn't up here, it's way below what the building cost is. So when it costs more to build than it is or than it does to buy, that's when you want to be looking into your houses. Because if you're able to buy a property at that time, you're going to have instant equity in that property. So let's say, for example, I bought one of these properties in Jacksonville that was $150,000, but it's a $200,000 property. That means that, or excuse me, yes, it costs $200,000 to build, but it costs us $100,000 to buy. What that means is that you have $50,000 on paper of equity because your house is worth $200,000, but again, you paid 150 on it. You can immediately refinance we can immediately refinance our mortgage so that we have an equity line of credit in our house for that $50,000. So thinking we put down, or if it is your first time buying a property, what we could put an FSA loan down, which is 3%, or if it's not your first time buying a property, we can split the commission on one of these properties. 100 or 20% of 150 is going to earn about 30,000, so 15,000 each. So let's just think about this. We both put in 15,000 to this property. We get an instant $50,000 a line of credit, and we now have a property that's pulling us in probably around 100 or 1,500 $2,000 every month for rents, plus, or because the conversion rate is about 1% of what the purchase is. So if you buy it for 200,000, you can probably rent it about for about 2,000. Typically, that's what you want to try and be shooting for. So the mortgages are going to be low. We're going to be making about $1,000 on cash flow every month from one of these units. Plus, we're going to have that $50,000 that we initially had built in for credit. So once we get that $50,000 as a line of credit and refinance our mortgage, what we're going to do is we're going to go and buy more properties. We're going to keep doing this in a market until we have enough money to actually buy an apartment complex, or we buy something that's bigger and student market, and it's something along in the student marketing or student housing market, excuse me. At this point, the best idea is probably going to be going somewhere like Wisconsin, Madison, with Milwaukee. My goal is to end up investing heavily in Milwaukee and in a lot of the southern areas as well. But Milwaukee is a great spot to start right now because it's cheap properties, high rate of returns on many of them, and you can get a high amount of cash flow from your students because they'll end up leaving for for a lot of these summer months to go home or do this or that or the other thing. If you're getting the right students, they're not going to argue with paying your deposit because again, they're students, they're drinking, they're doing all these things. You're not going to have to pay for all these general upkeeps that you would in a nicer apartment because again, students are buying it or renting out here. They don't care if it's a bit on the cheaper end. So what we want to do is we want to target that kind of a client. So between student housing marketing, which we can make a lot of money on every single year because the same people are going to need to go to that school again and again. We're never going to have a year where people aren't going to need to live to go to school. And between those houses that we can buy or residential properties, we're going to end up having a good amount of profit by the time that we're done investing together. We can form an LLP so that we can actually put in $15,000 into this account to buy this initial property. When we do that, what we're going to end up doing is actually protecting our own assets. So an LLP will only allow us to be sued for what's in it. So if we put $15,000 in it and we let that grow in $1 million, we can be sued for $1 million, but we'll never get sued for what we personally own. So if you end up pulling money out of this company, that's your money. However, if you end up wanting to invest and want to keep this going, what I want to do is I want to pull all the money that we do get from these deals, just keep reinvesting, because what we'll end up doing is we'll end up building an entire real estate little portfolio for ourselves that ultimately funds your retirement and it funds mine. And if you're one of those people that wants to work in the retirement, this gives you the opportunity to do the jobs that you want to do rather than the jobs that are going to end up giving you the most money, giving you that freedom in life to pursue your passions. And that's really what life is all about.